It's great, those three singing together. I think of them all being young people coming up through the ranks here in the church and serving the Lord. They're part of that group that we can say in our church that sometimes when others say, as soon as they get out of high school, they go run in their own direction. Well, sometimes they keep running for the Lord, and not from, but for. And I think it's wonderful that we have a group of the young people that are in their low 20s and still serving the Lord. And I think it is wonderful. So thank you all. You did a good job. John chapter 4. John chapter 4. And before I get to the message, I'd love your thoughts. Sometimes y'all give things and I say, oh man, I wish I'd have had that when I was preaching the message. And somebody brought to me this morning after, with the message that I preached today, this morning about being a victim and how do we handle those things. And I love this little thought, and it may not be still word for word the way they put it, but they said along those lines it goes with the message that it really helped them in dealing with some things in their life when they looked at their circumstances and they realized that what had happened to them, that it was not God's will, but what happened to them was it was more about man exerting his will over God's will, and oftentimes that creates a victim. And when man's will exerts itself over God's will, boy, anytime we start taking God off the throne, we get in a mess, don't we? And I appreciated that thought. John chapter 4. John chapter 4. I've titled the message of the thoughts that I'll give to you here tonight, Giving the Gospel Like Jesus. Giving the Gospel like Jesus. And just some little reminders that I want to give to you tonight. There are a few things that COVID has taken away from us and that has hurt America and has hurt our churches. Because we just changed our order of services. I say hurt. In some ways, we've just had to improvise. Some may think some of the changes have been better. The way we handle the songbooks, some of in the middle of all of that, people didn't want to use songbooks, so we got a screen so that people could see, which I'm not opposed to. It's according to what you put on the screen that makes a difference. And just like a piano, I'm not opposed to a piano, but if you play it in the wrong way, it can be wrong, or the same with an organ. And it's according to what you do with those things that make a difference. The offerings, we take the offerings in the back, and communion and different things like that have changed the order of service. The offerings, for example, some of you haven't played an offertory in a while. And for some, that is they're glad of that, maybe, because it's less pressure. But yet, on the other hand, there are some, maybe an instrument that you don't play that regularly, or when you played it, it would be during an offertory, and we miss some of those times. That, like Neola and her violin, I love hearing her. She does such a good job with her violin, and Michelle with her cello, and others that may play specials for the offertory. Those are some of the things that have changed. One of the things that has changed has also been our door-to-door soul winning. Now, I know that going door to door is something that has been in discussion for a long time, even before COVID happened. And the devil has used all of these things in order to discourage us from getting the gospel to other people. And now we're in a process of another attack on what I believe it would be another attack from the devil, just a roundabout way to get people to be fearful of somebody knocking on their door. And that's when the government oversteps their authority, and they look at the records of people that have not taken the COVID vaccine, and they're going to begin to knock on people's door, which, by the way, it's happening. And I don't know if they literally have a list or if they're going randomly. Somebody talked to me this morning and said, "Preacher, they're in our neighborhood, and they have been knocking on doors," because some of the neighbors are letting us know that they having their doors knocked on. And by the way, you need to be careful because some people will use these kind of things as a scam. And whether it's somebody who's actually functioning through the government, or somebody who sees this as an opportunity to get information from you that you shouldn't be giving. Here is my suggestion and my thoughts to you. If somebody knocks on your door and they begin to try to teach you or bring fear into your heart and begin to asking you questions on whether or not you have the COVID vaccine, I wish I could put a great old big light out on my driveway that says, "Please come knock on my door." Because whoever knocks on my door is going to have their platter full in dealing with a conversation that I'm going to give to them. Basically, I'm going to let it be known to them, and I believe you have every right in the world to say to them, "It's none of your business." And so whether you've gotten the vaccine or not, it is not the government's business to be knocking on your door. And so I told the people that talking to me this morning, what should they do? I said, I think what you should do, you should be as polite and kind as you can to the person that's knocking on your door, but you make them as miserable as you can so that they will go to whoever sent them out and resign from that position and tell them it's not worth going out door to door in America and trying to overreach a government's authority. And that's what I'll do. You'll have to do what you feel like is right to do. But that's what my plan is. So think about this now. We're going to have people, boy, I'm chasing another little rabbit here, but then you let a president claim that he's going to start censoring Facebook and media for anybody who does not give the proper information about COVID, that they're going to begin censoring them. Well, who's to say who has the right information anyway? And so is the government now going to start telling us that all of their information is correct? And if you don't abide by the government's information, and if you say something that doesn't go along with their information, then you are going to be censored. And look, y'all, this thing is headed to this one world government, and it's headed to the end times, and we need to be alert, and we need to be aware, and we have to be wise in the way that we handle these things. And so I think our government is just being trained or programmed, patterned. What can I say? They're prepared. They're being prepared to be ready to accept all of the end time events that are in the process of happening. So now you let somebody from New Heights Baptist Church knock on a door, and who wants to answer their door now? Especially now. Oh, it's the COVID people. Don't answer the door. It's the COVID people. And so it's going to get harder and harder to get somebody to answer the door. And so, and by the way, if the COVID people, it's according to how you look at this, if COVID people can go knock on a door, then church people can go knock on a door. And if they say you can't do this, and I'm going to say, then you tell all your government people to go home. When they go home, then we'll go home. But until they go home and get back in their rightful place, and then, by the way, we aren't soliciting either. When you go out door to door and you're trying to talk to people about the gospel, we aren't selling anything, and we're just trying to give information about the Lord. And so, yeah, I can get riled up about it. Well, it's getting harder and harder to get the gospel to people. And so how are we going to do it? How are we going to get the gospel to other people? We can't roll over and die as a church and just say, well, we can't be given the gospel anymore. No, that's not true. We need to do everything in our power to get the gospel out to as many people as we can. Brother Kidd preached about it the other night, and last week that we need to throw out as many nets as we can to get the gospel to as many people as we can. And so I want us to look at this story tonight. It's a very familiar story, but it's a story that can remind us of how simple it is to actually get the gospel out. And so I want us to look at what Jesus did in John chapter 4 with the woman at the well, and hopefully it will give us some help on giving the gospel like Jesus, giving the gospel like Jesus. So John chapter 4, before we read, let's pray together. Lord, thank you for another evening that we can be together. I pray that you'll help us to do everything we can to get the gospel out. Help us to learn these little simple truths from this story to encourage us and to motivate us to get the gospel to those that are around us. And we'll thank you for it in Jesus' name. Amen. John chapter 4, and most of us know the story here. And in verse 4 of John chapter 4, it says, he must needs go through Samaria. I'm going to come back to that in just a moment. In verse 6, now Jacob's well was there. Jesus, therefore, being wearied with his journey, sat thus on the well, and it was about the 6th hour. There cometh a woman of Samaria to draw water. Jesus saith unto her, give me to drink. For his disciples were gone away unto the city to buy meat. Then saith the woman of Samaria unto him, how is it that thou, being a Jew, askest drink of me, which am a woman of Samaria? For the Jews have no dealings with the Samaritans. Jesus answered and said unto her, if thou knewest the gift of God, and who it is that thou sayest to thee, give me to drink, thou wouldest have asked of him, and he would have given thee living water. The woman saith unto him, sir, thou hast nothing to draw with, and the well is deep, and from whence thence hast thou that living water? Art thou greater than our father Jacob, which gave us the well, and drank thereof himself, and his children, and his cattle? And Jesus answered and said unto her, whosoever drinketh of this water shall thirst again, but whosoever drinketh of the water that I shall give him shall never thirst. But the water that I shall give him shall be in him a well of water springing up into everlasting life. Gush, 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 gush. Thought I'd throw that in for the camp people. That's the way they sing that. I don't think they didn't sing that one last year. And so that must have been Brother Kevin Walker that always sang that one, Brother Ryan. And he had sing that one about the well and coming up deep and gush, 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 gush. So anyway, a water springing up into everlasting life. Verse 15, the woman saith unto him, sir, give me this water, that I thirst not, neither come hither to draw. Jesus saith unto her, go call thy husband, and come hither. The woman answered and said, I have no husband. Jesus said to her, thou hast well said, I have no husband, for thou hast had 5 husbands, and he whom thou now hast is not thy husband. In that saidest thou truly. The woman saith unto him, sir, I perceive that thou art a prophet. Look, if you would, at verse 27. We're going to read this, most of this story, and then I'll give you some thoughts here of how Jesus dealt with her. Verse 27, and upon this came his disciples, and marveled that he talked with the woman. Yet no man said, what seekest thou, or why talkest thou with her? The woman then left her water pot, and went her way into the city, and saith unto the men, come see a man which told me all things that ever I did. Is not this the Christ? Then they went out of the city and came unto him. And in the meanwhile his disciples prayed him, saying, Master, eat. But he said unto them, I have meat to eat that thou know not of. Therefore said the disciples one to another, hath any man brought him aught to eat? So Jesus said, I have meat that y'all don't know of. And so the disciples were saying to each other, did you bring him meat? Did you bring him meat? So they didn't understand what he was saying. Jesus saith unto them, my meat is to do the will of him that sent me, and to finish his work. Say not ye, there are yet 4 months, and then cometh harvest. Behold, put that in question form, say not ye that there are 4 months and then cometh the harvest? Behold, I say unto you, lift up your eyes and look on the fields, for they are white already to harvest. And then verse 39, and many of the Samaritans of the city believed on him for the saying of the woman, which testified, he told me all that ever I did. Well, I want us to learn some of the lessons that we can from Jesus in giving the gospel like Jesus. How do we get the gospel out? As the years have gone by, it has been, to be honest, it's been a little more difficult to get people to go door to door. And, I understand it. I really do. I got to be careful as a preacher that I don't stand up and minimize going door to door. I don't want to do anything to minimize it. I really don't. But yet I understand the difficulty, and I understand how times now are to the point to where the safety issues and so many different considerations that we have in going door to door. I don't know. I just haven't been able to get myself to stand up and throw all of you on a guilt trip because you don't go door to door. And some of you are looking even real nervous right now because you're wondering what direction I'm headed with all of this. And so I guess the question we have to ask ourselves, if you aren't going to go door to door, what are you going to do? I mean, how are you going to get the gospel out? There is a way that we have to get the gospel out, y'all. We can't live our lives without, the whole reason why Jesus came to this world was to seek and to save that which was lost. And so we can't let this thing go by the wayside of getting the gospel to those that are around us. That's why we need to keep running the bus route the way we do. I think it's one of the best outreaches is to run the bus route and to by the way, we go door to door in the bus route. I don't know of a better way to build the bus ministry than going door to door. And so we got to start getting the gospel out somehow. And so what are we going to do to get the gospel out? Well, let's look at what Jesus did. First of all, when it comes to giving the gospel like Jesus, in verse 4 he said, and he must needs go through Samaria. The first thing that I wrote down when it comes to giving the gospel is when God presses on your heart to give the gospel, you need to give the gospel. And so Jesus he was pressed. I got to go through Samaria. It is important that I go through Samaria. I promise if we will stay conscious of getting the gospel out to other people, there are going to be times that you're going to be at the grocery store or the gas station or in your neighborhood, and you're going to be at various places, and it's going to be impressed on your heart to talk to somebody. And in order for us to be what we ought to be as a Christian, when God presses on your heart to give the gospel to somebody, you need to give the gospel to them. And so we need to be prepared to give the gospel. You need to carry tracts with you, and you need to be ready to give an answer and to talk to other people about the gospel. And Jesus said, it is a must that I go through Samaria. And so I don't know. I don't go out for ice cream every Sunday night. I say it a lot of times, it's summer and go out for ice cream. And the truth is, I don't go for ice cream. I think we've got so much cake and all going on. And by the way, Rachel is a wonderful cake maker if you haven't figured that out yet. And so the teenagers had Rachel make a cake and chocolate and peanut butter, I think, on one side. I had them both, and vanilla and strawberry on the other. And boy, it is wonderful. And so, but we have so much cake and everything that and brownies and different things that I think our plan is to go home tonight and add some ice cream to our brownies and add some ice cream to our cake and add some ice cream. There's just a few cinnamon rolls left, Mrs. Hagen. Are not very many, but just a few. And so we're planning on adding some ice cream to all of that. But who's to say that tonight some of y'all may not go out for ice cream and it may be impressed in your heart? You need to invite that person to come to church with you. we went out to eat this afternoon, and as we're getting ready to pay the bill, Sydney's boy, she and Keegan both, Grandpa, I need one of those church tracts, and so I gave Keegan one, and Sydney, boy, she wanted one, and so I gave her a different one, and they just couldn't wait to give a church tract to the same waitress, and so our waitress got 2 church tracts, and she grinned as she took both, and we all just grinned, you know, and as she took them, and then both the kids are looking at me. I said, "That's okay." You know, they're almost, if maybe if we wouldn't intervene some, they maybe would have gotten in a brother-sister fight over giving out the church tract this afternoon. But I said, "It's okay." I said, "They're different," so I gave them both a different tract. And, you know, wouldn't it be something if all of us had that childlike desire and zeal just to give out church tracts and to get the gospel everywhere we could? It would have been impressed on their heart to give out the church tract, and so that's what they wanted to do. And so that's one of the ways that you can be a soul winner. I don't know how God's going to impress on your heart that you must needs talk to somebody, but boy, when it happens, you need to do so. So he was pressed to go through Samaria. Not only that, but in verse 6 it says, "Now Jacob's well was there. Jesus therefore, being wearied with his journey, sat thus on the well, and it was about the 6th hour. And there cometh a woman of Samaria." Now it's along the same lines that God presses on your heart. But let's not overlook the fact that there are going to be times when the path of another may come by that's seeking. And God is going to bring people your way if we'll just keep this thing in front of us and pray, "Lord, if you'll help us to get the gospel, I'll just make a commitment to you that if somebody comes by my path," look, I think if I'm not even asking that you change your lifestyle necessarily. You say, "Well, I don't come out and go door to door on Saturday. I don't go door to door any other time." Okay, then why don't you just be alert to when somebody comes by your pathway? Because if we will stay alert, I'd be willing to say there's going to be a lot of people that are going to come by our pathway, and if we wait on God to impress on our heart to talk to them, we might get a lot of opportunities to talk about the Lord. And so, you know, he was pressed to go through Samaria, and the path of another came by who was seeking, and we need to be looking for those that God may have put in our pathway who were seeking. What do you do if God brings somebody by your path and maybe they have a little bit of interest and you find that they're wanting to seek? What do we talk about? Well, the next thing I wrote down is you need to have practical everyday, have a practical everyday subject. And so, "Hey, I'm thirsty. What about you? We're sitting here at the well. You got something to draw with?" "Yeah. Well, hey, why don't you get me something to drink? You know, we're both sitting here together, and so why don't we drink here at the well at the same time?" And then Jesus says, "Well, you know, hey, speaking of water, you know, I know how you can have water that you could drink of the water where you never thirst again." And, "Oh, wow, really? Well, what kind of water is that?" You say, "Well, what am I going to talk about?" Well, when God brings somebody by your pathway, the very first thing you say shouldn't be, "Hey, if you're to die today, you know for sure you're going to go to heaven." You know, maybe you need to lead into this thing and just talk about some normal, everyday, practical stuff, and allow God to open that door, but be seeking and be sensitive to the things that God would want you to do so. And he just talked about everyday life. And I think sometimes we make this way too complicated. You know, the people around you are interested in everyday living. And so just talk to them. Talk to them like a person. And that's one of the things that I think heard to some throughout the years, and we tried to make soul winning a competition. Soul winning shouldn't be a competition. We ought to be reminded that we're talking to real people about a real eternity that have a real soul, and they live everyday life just like you do. And by the way, we all go to funerals, and you know, I've been to two and help participate in 2 at the last few weeks. There's no better time to talk about eternity than when somebody has passed away. And so whatever it is you're talking to somebody about, you don't You know, we say, yeah, and I do think it's good to have a plan, memorize the Romans Road, and have this certain statement, and have lead-in statements, and know what you're going to say next. I think all of that is good. But hey, y'all, there's nothing wrong with just talking about everyday life. And if you know how you know, when you die, you're going to go to heaven, that's all you need to tell somebody else how they're going to go to heaven. And Jesus did so by just talking about water. And so let your conversation be natural and practical, everyday subject. So he was pressed to go through Samaria. We look for the path of another who may be seeking to come into his pathway. Practical, everyday subject is what he talked about. And he wasn't prejudiced or selective of who he talked to. And she basically, as she said to him in verse 9, how is it that thou, being a Jew, askest drink of me, which am a woman of Samaria? For the Jews have no dealings with the Samaritans. It might be in your heart sometimes to say, oh man, I can't talk to them. I want to ask you the question, why not? Why not? Ooh, they look scary. You know, well, they might actually be scary, which is my next point. Her personal life was very sinful, and which, I mean, we live in a messed up world, y'all, and yeah, they're not going to look like church people if they aren't church people, and they're not going to, you know, I can't go talk to them. I just heard them cuss. Well, maybe that's more the reason why you do need to go talk to them. You know, they need the gospel. And boy, this lady, her personal life was very sinful. And Jesus did not allow skin color to get in the way of whom he was talking to. And so we need to be careful with. We live in this day and age that we have way too many people that want to brainwash us to think. By the way, this is another way where socialistic, liberal people are trying to turn us into a divided country by trying to get us to be convinced that we are a country that is a prejudiced country. I think it's just a very few people that actually are saying that. And yes, we got some wacko people out there that are prejudiced. I'm not saying there aren't people that are prejudiced, but I know one thing, most of the people that I know don't look at skin color before they make a decision. And I mean, the places we go, the entertainment that we go to, we don't take a skin color count before we go into any place to determine if our skin color is going to be the one that's going to be the majority. America doesn't act that way. And so you got to be careful in letting people think that we do act that. Some do. Again, I understand. Some do. But it's the ones that have warped minds that think that way. And so don't allow skin color, or just because somebody looks a little bit on the freaky side, keep you from talking to them. You might be shocked at how somebody has a heart on the inside that might be as big as can be, and their outward appearance maybe isn't very good. But look, y'all, when Jesus said to her, go get your husband. I don't have a husband. And boy, if we weren't careful, we'd say, ooh, man, that woman, she's been with more people than Elizabeth Taylor, you know, and all these young people saying, who? You know, so, you know, do we want those kind of people in our church? Absolutely, we want those kind of people in our church. They need the Lord. Oh, she looks rough. Look at, you know, look at the way she's got herself all decked out. She's trying to draw attention to all these different areas, and you know, ooh, man, we can't have that. No, she needs the gospel. That's what she needs. She needs somebody to love her and somebody to talk to her. Well, he's weird looking, and he's got this going on and that going on, and all tattooed up, and his pants is about ready to fall off of him, and you know, I can't go over and talk to him. Look, he needs the Lord. He needs the Lord. You might be shocked at how people will be open to the gospel. She was open to the gospel, and so giving the gospel like Jesus, he was pressed. So when God pressed presses on your heart, he was pressed to go through Samaria, and the path of another may be come in your way that may be seeking. Just talk practical, everyday subject. Don't be prejudiced or selective, and understand that the people we give the gospel to, their personal life is very sinful. And then the last one, Jesus looked at the priority, considered to be a priority to spread the gospel. And he said, Jesus, we're hungry. You hungry? You need to go eat. And he said, well, I have meat that y'all don't know of. And they started talking amongst each other. Did y'all get him meat? They went into town to get him meat, but they said, well, who gave him meat? Did anybody give him meat? And Jesus said in verse 34, my meat is to do the will of him that sent me and to finish his work. You know what Jesus said? I'm more consumed with getting the gospel to others that need it than I am feeding my own soul. Now we have to ask ourselves, how long has it been since we had that kind of priority in our life where we said it's more important for us to get the gospel? You know, it might be more important for you to get the gospel if you're just interrupted and God presses on your heart and brings you in the pathway of somebody, and you're just standing there at the gas station. They maybe don't look like the kind of person that it's not a church person, and boy, they might look a little bit rough. But maybe God allowed your pathways to happen, and it wasn't for the sake of pumping gas at that time. Maybe it wasn't for the sake of groceries.Maybe it was just that God brought the two of you together, and the priority was to give the gospel to them, and God got both of you at the same place at the same time for you to give the gospel, and God impressed on your heart to talk to them. And we got to do away with our prejudice and understand that God might be leading us to talk to that person so that they can have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. So that's my challenge. My challenge is, let's give the gospel like Jesus did. Let's just be looking for it. Let's put priority on giving the gospel. And so throughout the week, maybe we should leave here tonight and say, Lord, if you'll help me to be sensitive to where you want me to give the gospel. I'll talk to whoever you want me to talk to. I'll make it a priority. I won't be selective. And I'll trust you to bring me into the path of somebody else. And when you press on my heart to talk to that person, I'll just try to do so with practical, everyday subject. And I know they may look like their personal life is very sinful, but I want to make it a priority to spread the gospel to as many as I can. And if we will do that, then we will be giving the gospel just like Jesus gave the gospel. Didn't say he was going door to door. It just said he was living life in the way that God would want him to live it. And God brought this woman into his life, who had a rough life. And by the way, because Jesus got the gospel to her, many believed because of her testimony. So we never know how the spreading of the gospel can happen, even far beyond us, if we will just obey the Lord and give the gospel just like Jesus did. All right, let's have a word of prayer.